And I also wanted to take just a few minutes, and bear with me, to talk about what we're here to do. And I'll start with a few words about my role as chair. As a lawyer, I'm attuned to the idea of conflict of interest. And if this were a legal matter, I would be conflicted out, meaning I shouldn't participate. But as a local political actor, I know many of the people involved. I've worked with them, and I continue to do so and will continue to do so. And as chair of the Public Safety Committee, I've certainly weighed in on the Reimagining Public Safety process and taken votes on this issue. So it seems strange that it's set up that I'm on this ethics advisory board, but the county ethics code essentially tracks New York State law creating ethics advisory boards. And New York State law requires that a member of the legislature serve. And if I stepped away, one of my colleagues would have to take my place. And all of my colleagues on the legislature, to a greater or lesser extent, all have the same problem of being involved in this issue. So a potential conflict of interest, it's not really potential, it exists. And in some sense, it's unavoidable. And I've thought about, why is it set up that way? Well, one reason I see is in the nature of what we're called to do. We can issue an advisory opinion, and it does not carry the force of law. We can't make any municipality do anything. Our opinion is an opinion. The city is clearly free to ignore our advisory opinion if we issue one. And so legal conflict is not the issue. But it still seems messy to me. And this leads me to the second reason why I think they want a legislator on the Ethics Advisory Board, which is that this is inherently there's an inherent political nature to the Ethics Advisory Board. I think a political actor is included because we're asked to make what at heart are political recommendations about what we want our government to be and how government is supposed to work. And from that standpoint, having someone involved who has an understanding of governmental process does make some sense. And I would offer in my defense, I have some qualifications. I've practiced law for 30 some years. I'm in my 7th year on the legislature. I also served for a decade as a municipal attorney. And I've been responsible in the past to conduct investigations inside a large corporation I worked at. I also lecture on investigations at the Cornell Law School as part of a course that I teach up there. So I hope that my experience provides some positive benefit to our work. But in any event, I completely admit, I carry my baggage with me, good and bad. So what can we do about that? Because the law says I have to be here. Well, I have a couple comments. I'd like us to proceed with as much transparency as possible. We'll need some opportunity to deliberate in private, I believe. But otherwise, to the maximum extent we can, I believe we should let the public see what we are doing. And we should try to proceed by consensus. The law setting up the Ethics Advisory Board says 4 votes are necessary for any action of the 5 of us. So clearly I can't act alone. Indeed, I can do nothing without you agreeing as well, at least 3 of you. And 4 of you could stop me from suggesting anything. I'm hoping that our decisions will be unanimous to the extent we can get there. And I hope we have good deliberations and reach consensus. But I think that's an important element. Finally, I suggest that each of you have a role to play. First, police me as chair. If you see me doing anything that suggests bias or favoritism, tell me. Or at least, if you're unsure, ask questions. I have thick skin, and I want you to be comfortable with what we're doing here. And second, we all need to work, as the saying goes, without fear nor favor. And that's easy to say, but sometimes hard to do. We have to go where we have to go, I believe, if we're going to be effective. And I urge you to keep that directive in mind, that you just need to keep going. In that, we need to be patient. We need to please continue to avoid talking with outsiders about the substance of the complaint, and try, to the extent you can, to avoid reaching conclusions. We will get there in time, But in the meantime, we need to, as a body, try really hard to follow process, try to pay no attention to anything that takes us away from the job at hand. And finally, I would like to talk about importance. An advisory opinion is advice, right? Perhaps unwanted or even unsolicited advice. But New York State law uses the word shall in the charge to the Ethics Advisory Board in directing us to receive and consider this complaint or any other. We do not have discretion to look the other way. There is no city ethics advisory board, so it falls to us solely and alone to reach whatever decisions we end up making. And just like people, governments can be uncomfortable taking advice. And in fact, at the extreme end, authoritarian governments are really bad at it, right? They cannot risk admitting any kind of error. And I see that as a critical flaw in authoritarian systems. And I believe fully that democratic systems are far better because of this reason. But no government is immune from perhaps seeing advice as criticism, and that could occur here. But getting that advice is built into democratic government. And we have to remember that. It's for a reason. Our small d democratic systems are set up to provide accountability. And that accountability sometimes comes through elections or petitioning our government, say through making public comment, as we recently heard. But this ethics advisory board is a way as well. With a focus on the specific and essential conduct of government, we can help our government recognize problems and address them. We as a community cannot learn and do better otherwise. So it's really important what we're doing here today, or starting to do here today. I would say it's a strength and part of the genius of democracy that we're not just allowed to do this, but we're encouraged to do it and directed to do it by our government, to look hard at our own conduct and render an opinion. With all that said, again, thank you for being here as citizens, and thanks for letting me talk for a little bit. I promise I won't be so wordy in the future, but I wanted to lay the groundwork there. Let's proceed to business.